In October of 1978, a nurse named Clara was responsible for the Tuesday afternoon recreation program at Pleasant View Care Center in Atlanta, Georgia. The scheduled performer, a local gospel singer who came every third Tuesday, had called that morning to cancel. She had 20 residents expecting entertainment at 2 o'clock and nothing to put in front of them. She went to the lounge at 1:45. There were perhaps 8 visitors in the room alongside the residents, family members, a social worker from a neighboring organization, a woman sitting quietly in the corner with an elderly patient she had come to see. Clara explained the situation briefly. She said she was sorry. She knew it was an unusual thing to ask, and she was asking anyway. If anyone in the room was comfortable singing a few songs, anything at all, she would be grateful. The woman in the corner looked up from the resident she had been sitting with. She said she supposed she could sing something. Clara said thank you and went to find a chair for her to stand near. She did not ask the woman's name. She would not think to ask until it was too late to ask without embarrassing herself considerably. Tina Turner had been in Atlanta since Saturday. She was performing 3 nights at a small venue on the South Side, the kind of room her career occupied in 1978, the kind of room she filled with the same total commitment she had always brought to every room, regardless of its relationship to the rooms she had filled before. She gave those audiences what she had. She got back in the car. She moved to the next city. She was in Atlanta through Tuesday because of a woman named Mrs. Viola, an older woman who had known her family years ago and who had been at Pleasant View for nearly 2 years. Visiting was not an obligation. It was the kind of thing you did when you remembered that the world contained people who had been present in your life before your life became the thing it had become, and who deserved to have someone walk through their door on a Tuesday afternoon. She had arrived at 12:30. She and Mrs. Viola had talked for an hour about family, about the ordinary news of the months since they had last seen each other, about the small things that constitute a life in a care facility, the texture of a week, the quality of the nurses, the view from the room, about how Mrs. Viola was doing and how Tina was doing, honestly. The way 2 people talk when neither of them needs to pretend. When Clara came in at 1:45, Tina had been sitting with Mrs. Viola in the lounge for a while, in no particular hurry to leave. She listened to Clara's explanation. She looked at the residents, 20 people in various postures of waiting, in chairs and wheelchairs arranged in a loose semicircle around the empty space at the front of the room where the entertainment was supposed to have been. She looked at their faces. She said she supposed she could sing something. Clara arranged a chair near the front of the room. She asked if she needed anything, a microphone, accompaniment, a music stand. The woman said no. She said she was fine. Clara stepped back. She had organized 2.5 years of Tuesday afternoon programs. She had seen local singers, piano players, a barbershop quartet, a retired music teacher who came once a month. She had seen people perform for this particular audience and understood what it required. Not virtuosity, not volume, but presence. The specific quality of a performer who understands that the people in the chairs in front of them deserve the real thing and not a polite version of it. She looked at the woman standing near the chair at the front of the room, and she was not sure what she was about to hear. The woman stood for a moment with her hands at her sides. She looked at the 20 residents in the semicircle in front of her. She looked at them the way a performer looks at an audience when they are taking the room in, understanding what it needs before they have decided what to give it. Then she began to sing. She sang without amplification, without accompaniment, without any of the apparatus that typically mediates between a voice and a room. Just the voice. In a lounge with large windows and afternoon light coming through them and 20 elderly people in chairs looking at her, What happened in the first 30 seconds was the thing that happens when a voice of genuine quality enters a room in which no one was expecting a voice of genuine quality. The conversations that had been happening in quiet corners stopped. The man near the window who had been looking outside turned to look at the front of the room. The woman who had been working a crossword set it down on her knee. The room reassembled itself around what was coming from the front of it. Clara, standing to the side with her clipboard, stopped writing. She sang for 35 minutes, 3 songs, then a 4th that she had not planned, then a 5th because the room asked for it, without words. In the specific way rooms ask for more when what they have been given is reaching them at a level they did not expect to be reached at on a Tuesday afternoon in October. She moved between gospel and the blues and something that belonged to neither category and both of them, the particular music of a voice that has lived in multiple traditions and carries all of them at once. The residents were quiet in the way that audiences are quiet when they are receiving something. Not the passive quiet of people with nowhere to be, but the active quiet of people paying attention with their whole bodies. The woman in the front row was named Ruth Danforth. She was 84 years old and had been at Pleasant View for 18 months. She had come from St. Louis, where she had lived for 50 years, raised her children, worked her working life, attended her church, and gone, on certain evenings with her late husband, to the clubs on the south side of the city where the music was worth going out for. She had seen Ike and Tina Turner perform in St. Louis in 1969. She remembered the night precisely, the venue, the way the room was arranged, the dress Tina had been wearing, the specific quality of what happened when she sang. She had talked about it for years afterward as one of the finest evenings of music she had ever sat inside. She had been at Pleasant View for 18 months and had not heard anything that reached her in the same way. Not because the music at Pleasant View was poor, but because what she had heard in St. Louis in '69 occupied a category by itself in the accounting of her experience. She recognized the voice before the end of the first song. Not immediately, not in the first note, but in the specific place that a voice occupies in the air of a room, the frequency of it, the way it finds the registers that matter and stays in them rather than moving toward the registers that impress. She sat with the recognition for a verse and a chorus, testing it against the 19 years that had passed since St. Louis. By the second verse, she was certain. She sat in her chair in the front of the semicircle with her hands folded in her lap, and she looked at the woman singing, and she allowed herself, for the duration of what was happening in the room, to be in 2 places at once. In a lounge in Atlanta in 1978, and in a club in St. Louis in 1969. In a chair with a lap blanket, and in a booth with her husband's hand on the table beside her cup. She let the music do what music does when you have been waiting for it without knowing you were waiting. After the 5th song, when it was clear that the afternoon had given everyone in the room what it had, the woman from the corner began moving back toward Mrs. Viola's chair. Clara intercepted her near the door. She said thank you, with the specific intensity of someone who understands that what just happened exceeded what thank you can carry. She asked for her name. The woman told her. Clara stood with this for a moment. She was 31 years old and knew enough about music to understand what she had just organized by accident. She said she wasn't sure what to say. The woman said she didn't need to say anything. She asked if she could sit with Mrs. Viola for a while longer before she left. Mrs. Ruth stopped her on the way back. She said, from her chair in the front of the semicircle, in the direct way of someone who has reached a point in life where the indirect approach no longer seems worth the time, that she had seen her in St. Louis. She said the year, she said the venue, she said her husband had been alive then. Tina Turner stopped. She looked at this woman in the front row of a care facility in Atlanta and she asked, "You remember that?" Mrs. Ruth said, "I remember everything about that night." They talked for a few minutes. Nothing that belongs to any official account, nothing that anyone else in the room heard clearly. The particular conversation that two people have when one of them has just been seen across a long distance by someone who was present before the distance existed. Before she left, Mrs. Ruth asked her how she was doing. She said it the way she had said everything that afternoon, directly, without softening, as a genuine question rather than a pleasantry. Tina Turner looked at her and gave an honest answer. She said, "I'm working." She said, "It's good work." She said, "I'm all right." Mrs. Ruth looked at her for a moment. Then she said she was glad. She said she meant that. Clara organized the Tuesday afternoon program at Pleasant View for another 6 years before she moved into a different role. She talked about that particular Tuesday for a long time, not as a celebrity story. She was careful about how she told it, careful not to let it become something it wasn't. She told it as a story about what she had learned from 2.5 years of Tuesday programs, which was that the real thing and the performed version of the real thing are distinguishable from each other by anyone in a room, regardless of age or circumstance, and that what the residents of Pleasant View had received on that October afternoon was unambiguously the real thing. She said that no one in the room had known who was standing at the front of it until it was over, and she said that this was the part of the story that mattered, that the 20 people in those chairs had received what they received without any information about who was giving it, that what reached them on its own terms, with no assistance from context or reputation or recognition. Just a voice in a room, and 20 people in chairs who could tell the difference. In the years that followed, through Private Dancer and the Grammy Awards and the Maracana Stadium and all the rooms that kept getting larger, Tina Turner gave everything she had to every room she entered. This is what the record shows. This is what the people who were in those rooms attest to. The output did not vary with the size of the room. The commitment did not scale with the attendance figure. The 20 residents at Pleasant View Care Center in Atlanta received the same thing that 18,000 people in a European arena received. The same voice, the same presence, the same complete giving of what she had to give. The room was different. What she brought to it was not. If this story moved something in you, share it with someone today. Subscribe to this channel. Leave a comment. Have you ever given your full effort to a room that had no idea what it was receiving? We tell these stories because they deserve to be told. We'll see you in the next one.